right. Welcome, people. If you're just joining, we're still at 10:59 Mountain Time. So we're a minute. Now we're finally right on the hour. If you have already joined, gold star to you. You are prompt, you're on time, and you are probably a high achiever. So we're going to wait for a couple people to join in and get this show on the road. As I know with these live streams, sometimes there is a little bit of a delay. So we're going to make sure that we've got everyone here, and then we'll get started. So let's first welcome our great guest, Jenn Lim, to the party. What's up, Jenn?
Oh,
All right.
how you doing?
Say that again.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm
Good.
yeah, always happy to see you.
Yeah, it's fun. We haven't connected in a long time, and so I'm happy to do this. And for everybody who's joining, Jenn and I got to work together for a few years with the Delivering Happiness team, and now we are working together with our various keynotes and trainings that we do, and wanted to get together and talk about humor and happiness. So to get started, I want to start with an activity that I know you and I both really like doing with groups, and just asking something for you to say something weird about yourself that you love, or something weird that makes you happy. It could be also like a guilty pleasure, like a TV show you love to binge that you don't tell a lot of people about, or type of music you listen to. So I'll start and I'll give an example. One of the weird things about me that I love, or something weird that makes me happy, is that I love the smell of my dog's feet. Because my dog's feet smell like Fritos, corn chips. And it makes me feel like, if I'm smelling that smell, it makes me feel like I'm at home, cozied up, and that kind of stuff. And so next, Jenn, you're going to answer. But for the people watching live, I want you to know that this question is for you too. I want you to put in the chat something weird about you that you love, or something weird that makes you happy, or a guilty pleasure. All right, Jenn, your turn. What's something?
I'm just curious. Do you ever have an inclination to like nibble on them because you're like, oh, corn chips?
Kind of. I will say I'll kiss the tops of my dog's feet. I'll be like, "Oh, good, your little paw," because they're so cute. And I bathe my dogs pretty often, just so people aren't too grossed out. But I don't care. I'm not too proud.
That's cool. That's weird enough. Just weird enough. I've been noticing this more recently. I start doing this like on my, like, as if I have a mustache when I'm thinking. And sometimes I do it in public, and sometimes I do it when I'm like delivering, I'm like, And then what I realized it was I was mimicking my dad after some period of time, because I don't really have a mustache yet. I mean, I kind of do sometimes, but I try to take care of that. But I realized I'm just mimicking my dad. And that makes me like, that's weird because it looks weird, but it makes me happy because he passed away 20 years ago. And it's kind of like, oh, my dad's here. Like he's with me.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
I like that. Cool. That's cool that you put that together too. That like, why am I doing this? Like I have a mustache, and it's like, oh, my dad used to do that. That's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah.
Now becomes Go ahead.
Another weird thing I just noticed the other day is when I wash my hands, I make a little cup like this, and I fill the cup with water after I've got soap on it, and I let it spill over like a fountain and wash. And I've done that ever since I was a kid. I just realized, like, why do I do that? That's weird. But anyway.
That's awesome.
So we all have something, unique or different or weird about us, or guilty pleasures. And again, for anyone joining, if you're in the chat, feel free to tell us something unique or fun or funny or weird about you that you love. But I like doing this with groups. I remember doing this with a healthcare group, and this one surgeon shared that when she passed her boards exam, she went home and she ran a bath, and she lined the bathtub with chocolate chips all around the bathtub. And then she would eat one by one, these chocolate chips off the side of her bathtub. Yeah. And she's like, to this day, that's how I reward myself.
I love it. I'm going to try that. I think I'm going to try it with gummy bears.
There you go. Yeah. And her colleagues were like, don't you own a bowl? Like, I hope you keep a clean tub. But what's cool about an activity like this to me is that, particularly for people like coworkers, colleagues, and people in leadership positions, Harvard Business Review did a study that they had these groups, these teams that were supposed to come up with creative solutions to complex problems. And they had one team like, just get into problem solving mode. And another team, everyone first go around and share your greatest accomplishment. And then another team, it was everyone go around and share an embarrassing moment first. And the embarrassing moment group outperformed the other groups by 25%, 25% more solutions generated and more creative solutions. I'm curious your thoughts as like, why do you think that is?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think
And it's not a test. I'm just asking you your opinion.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, I thought this was going to be nice and funny conversation with Paul and making me think. Dang it. I think at any time we kind of zoom out of a situation and put a different, like a reframe in some ways, just it kind of puts our own mindset in a different place. And in your specific example, I think digging deeper into something that we don't normally share that might be a little bit, vulnerable or scary or something, kind of breaks the barriers within us and also around us, around the people that we're with. So like a more like a deeper icebreaker, I guess. A longer icebreaker.
I like that. Yeah. Steven on the comments said psychological safety, which I think is exactly what you were getting at. If we're supposed to come up with these creative solutions, I'm not going to be quite as shy about sharing my like way out there idea with my colleagues after I just told them I'm smelling my dog's feet or eating chocolate chips off the side of my bathtub or whatever. There's something magical, I feel like, that happens when we show like that little bit more silly side to us at times, that we can't share all of that, but that little part of who you are when you're like around your siblings or your best friend or your family. There's something neat that happens with our surroundings. And I think it does lend to psychological safety, like what Steven was saying. And Danny said eating cereal out of the box and reading self-help articles is her go-to guilty pleasure. I love it.
That's very specific. I love it too.
Yeah. And vegan eggs, which makes me wonder, like, which came first, the vegan or the egg? Okay. So we're here to talk a little bit about humor and happiness. And I love everybody sharing all their fun, weird things and idiosyncrasies. This is great. But so Jenn, I'm curious, like with your book that came out, how long ago did Beyond Happiness come out? It's been about a year now, right?
2 plus, I think.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what I love about your book, kind of taking the science of happiness and the idea of happiness and going, well, what goes into all that and what is beyond that? And in the book, you really talk about the need for leaders to learn to not only embrace their strengths, but also their weaknesses, their hopes, their fears, and to learn to be vulnerable, which is what we were just talking about. So why is embracing that vulnerability and even like the pain points in life, why is embracing that side of it and what most people would call like negative emotions, why is that important and how does it fit into happiness?
Yeah, it's there's a super long answer and then I'm trying to get to a shorter one because for that question alone, I mean, there's a specific answer that comes to mind, but for me, context, for everyone, I think context matters, and timing really mattered for the writing of that book, because I started writing it in 2020 at the beginning. And then if everyone remembered how the world got 2020, like every month, every other week, there was a headline that came up that just kind of blew our minds of what the world was going through. So you can imagine I had this nice and tidy outline, and it was just like, okay, this is freaking crap because the world has changed, and this is like, but it was something substantial to say about sustainable happiness and perceived happiness, which, is not rainbows and unicorns. Sustainably and scientifically, it's about purpose and values. It's about being authentic to yourself, all the things, I'm preaching to a choir of you, but, like having a sense of progress and connection and all that. But when 2020 happened, I realized there was something deeper that I wasn't really focusing on too much enough in the book. And long story short, that's when I came to this deeper revelation of how I wanted to go beyond because it's very cliche, but we really don't know our highs until we know our lows.
Mm,
And during that time, everyone in the world experienced some sort of loss, some sort of grief, some sort of trauma. And being able to acknowledge, let alone process that, the whole world hasn't. I believe in a lot of ways till even today,
yeah,
given
I agree.
the Gallup, the global, this stuff, the global workforce, still number one thing affecting us all is burnout. It's the reasons why is because there's a lot of things that have been unprocessed, I believe. So therefore, this whole beyond happiness, this thing, let's stretch this out. Like, let's be real about if we want to truly be, that sustainably happy and beyond, which is fulfillment. Making sure we're not like necessarily waking up in the morning and going to sleep at night happy every moment, because we all know that's just not possible. But
Right.
if we can have that time period and feel like, hey, this is fulfilling. This was fulfilling because I was living by my values. This was fulfilling because I'm prioritizing my time, in the right ways. All those things, that's what kind of led me to this whole thing of there's something beyond. And it's up to us to tap into those lows, to really be, befriend them, embrace them, understand them, to understand our highs even more.
Yeah, what you said too about that we never really did process or unpack kind of what happened during that couple of years.
Yeah.
If if it were just to an individual, like an individual went through something where they had maybe a lot of people they knew got sick or even passed away, and they had to take 2 years to where they were isolated from most people they knew, maybe time off from their job and all that kind of stuff, that would be a major life event that you might be working through with a therapist or something, and
Yeah.
processing like what now? This was a big blow to what I had going on in my life. It was a setback. I have a lot of feelings about it. But once we kind of came out of the pandemic, it was just like globally, we were just like, okay, game on. We're good.
Yeah.
Like everything's fine now. That was in the past, but there was a lot that happened there. And then, like you said, a lot that people lost or gave up. A lot
Mhm.
of things changed that I feel like did affect us. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why when I read your book and when you talked to me about, what you were doing, like even pre-book when you're ideating all this stuff, and this was during this time as well. And what I really loved what you were pointing out, because there's so many great tips in it, just about like, flexing your humor muscles and all that stuff into habits. But what I really loved is how you touched upon this as well. So it's like beyond humor in the sense of everyone's thinking, what are the highs of our lives to make it funny? But it really is about what you touch upon, those low points, and to make it lighter is actually to dig into those moments. So I loved what you did to kind of make it go beyond as well.
Yeah. A lot of people, when I'm speaking about humor, a lot of the concern for people is like, well, we can't just turn a blind eye to the difficult parts of our life and just try to make light of it or whatever. And for the most part with humor, you can't do that because most humor in life, and most of if you think about the great comedy, comes
Yeah.
from the pain points in life. You have to face it head on, address it. And, when you're writing stand-up comedy, you start with what's true
Hmm.
and go from there, and really starting a lot of times with the pain. And in fact, to your point, there's some great research about humorous reappraisal. So there's positive reappraisal, which is looking back at past stressful or traumatic events and going, what can I glean positive from this? Trying to reappraise situations in our life more positively,
Mm.
which overall increases overall positive emotions and enhances well-being. But humorous reappraisal, what they found is it actually can increase well-being even more so by looking back and trying to reframe things or mine your struggles for nuggets of humor.
Mm.
And there are ways to do that. And in fact, being able to do that, people who practice that are actually end up being more resilient, more optimistic,
Mm.
and have a greater resolve in the face of adversity.
I love that. It's so aligned with one of the exercises we do, um, which is the happiness heartbeats and the
Mm-hmm.
understanding of, really going back and reflecting on your life and naming like what were your highs, what were your lows, not just at work but in life. And one of the reasons why we do that is to understand when you get into those lows and then you see your high, then you kind of look back and say, oh, I actually got through, like, that was a hellish moment in my life. And then I got to
Yes.
this high and I did that. I can read all these self-help books, I can read all these inspirational quotes all I want. But when we realize what's within us to be able to get through these, hills and valleys, I think that's where the resilience and grit comes in within, not just from external sources of inspiration. So I love that you're tapping into that too.
Yeah, there's something empowering about that, to be able to look back like at those the highs and lows activities, something empowering to look and go, all right, I've been through some pretty tough valleys and I've persevered, and I'm not going to pretend that what's going on now is fine or great. But I do know that I'll be able to get through it. An example using humor, I was living in Santa Rosa, California when the wildfire came through there, and there's thousands of people were evacuated and homes burned and that kind of thing. And there was one family, the Havstead family, who lost their home during that. And a month or so later, we were in the holiday season, and the only thing left was their fireplace. And they decided that, it's like, we're supposed to send out like holiday greeting cards now and that kind of stuff. They went back to their old home. Only the fireplace was up, and they hung stockings on the mantle, and they hired a photographer, and they took their picture in ugly sweaters and took a couple funny pictures for their holiday greeting cards. And I spoke with the photographer that did the photo shoot for them. And he said it was a really powerful experience, because being back at their burned home, there were obviously some tears shed again as they were back there, and it was difficult for them to be back there. But then as they were setting up for their kind of funny photo shoot for their holiday cards, there was some laughter that was happening as they were getting set up. And he said, that laughter in the midst of that, it almost was like a signal to one another that, this sucks. This is devastating. But every time they laughed, it was almost like they look at each other like, but we're going to be okay. But we're going to get through this. And there's something about humor too, that our brains can't process humor and psychological distress at the same time. So any moment of levity that we're giving ourselves is just a brief break from our trauma and our stress.
I have a question for you, but before that, I had a random thought pop up in my head as you were sharing that. This is a total trivia. When you were talking about that, it reminded me of this line from the film, and it was laughter through tears is my favorite emotion. It is an old one. I don't know if you remember this at all.
I know that quote, and I didn't know where that was attributed to.
Dolly Parton was in the movie.
Oh,
Julia
okay.
Roberts.
Maybe that's who I saw it, like a meme with that quote on it.
Yeah, it's Steel Magnolias. But anyway, it was like this one scene.
Steel Magnolia. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, probably I saw Steel Magnolias at some point, but
when you were 2.
I've seen that quote before. I love that.
Yeah. There's something, and then you just provided the physiological reason why there's something in that moment of what we're experiencing in the body. And this kind of leads into my question, if you don't mind. I was just curious how, because like if we bring this back to where we are today, knowing that, laughter through tears, etc., we're still in a very turbulent state of the world in some ways. And knowing we're coming about another, there's still a lot of, the wars are going on. There's an election coming up. I'm curious what you do to synthesize how there's so much of these, semi-chaotic things that can happen, and know that it affects us internally, but there's also some amazing things in our life that we want to be grateful for, that we celebrate, and that we're happy about. So I'm curious how you synthesize and reconcile that on a day-to-day basis, knowing that it's okay to experience this huge, like, wide gamut of emotions, and what you do. And I know you talk about it in the book, but I'd love to hear like where you are with that now.
Well, the world is sad and scary and traumatic, but it's also fun and funny and absurd. And both of those things are always happening at the same time. And as you know, and maybe a lot of the people watching this know, we have already built into our brain a negativity bias that wants to point out all the shitty stuff, right? And is like, you need to be worried about this and worried about this. So we're hyper aware of that. And that was a really good survival thing. That helped us survive when we were primal. Yeah. But it doesn't really help us thrive now that we don't have to be worried about the next oncoming, pterodactyl or whatever.
I was thinking T-Rex, but in the same family.
Yeah, same thing. Because now what it does is it just helps us point out all the negativity, or helps us, pinpoint other people's mistakes, like the fact that humans and dinosaurs didn't live together. But we
Jurassic
can
Park
train our brain then to have a funny focus and be hardwired for humor, so that we can start to see the absurdity and the funny stuff in life more often. And I have not met anyone yet who has done that to the point that they're like, gosh, I just didn't even notice that there's a bunch of bad stuff going on anymore. Like I'm so goofy now that the world seems great. I've been talking, researching and speaking on humor for 15 years. And, people all the time, from the first year I started doing this to now, always say, this is so great. We need this now more than ever. And I'm waiting, I guess, for the time where somebody's going to go, you know what? The world's pretty good. I think we're all set on humor, but thanks.
That would be an interesting day if we're alive for that. But you're right. I think now more than ever, it's needed. And I also think it's kind of a beautiful thing in the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, that more people are so much open to it, more open and receptive to these new ways of living on a day-to-day basis, that I think in BC, like before COVID, we were more resistant to. Like, I don't want to change that. That's working well. Like, why would I touch that? And do something else and do something else. But now it's like, wait, something's not working. let me start anew. And the whole beginner's mindset that I've seen around the world about like things that we thought were just true might not be anymore. And so I love that we're having a bigger sense of awareness that things could be different.
Yeah, well, and as you know, and when we're, when we've been out talking about the science of happiness, that so much of the happiness research tells us that much of our happiness is within our control, and that we can kind of take with various habits, we can take control of doing that. And I think you're right. I think people are more interested now in, you know what, maybe that is important. I'm not just going to focus on the grind or just, full speed ahead. Maybe I do want to look and go, what can I do day to day to, increase my overall well-being and happiness. And, to me, like, even somebody who performs comedy and talks about humor, I get in that mindset of like taking myself, my life, everything way too serious. And our brains want to create our lives as though we are the main actor in a drama, and that everything's happening to us, and that everything is a huge deal. And it heightens our acute stress. Like, I was early on in my career as a speaker, I had this great opportunity to speak at a huge conference in Boston. And there's all of these like Fortune 500 companies. So I was just so dialed in, like, I am going to network with everybody. Like, everyone I made eye contact with was getting my business card. I'm like, hey, how you doing? My name's Paul. I'd love to work with you. Hey, my name's Paul. Give me a call sometime. And I was speaking with this executive. And when we got done talking, I go, okay, great. Give me a call sometime. And I reach in my pocket and I hand him my hotel room key. And I was like, oh, and he goes,
your wife does that.
Yeah, he goes, that escalated quickly. And I was like, oh God, oh my God. And I got so red and embarrassed, and I was mortified, and I was beating myself up for it. I was like, you idiot, you ruined this great opportunity, and I was just so hard on myself, because again, like, my brain was telling me, this was your big moment, dude, and you ruined it. When actually you know, as I tell people that story, it's like, it's a funny story, you know,
Yeah.
it's not that big. And he was a nice guy, and, you know, he kept our room clean. So it's fun.
So you had 2 keys. That's good. You were able.
Yeah, exactly.
That's key. That's
But,
what, they
but
always
like,
ask you when you check in, do you want 2 keys or 1? I'm like, 2. You never know.
right. See, and what you just did there is a really good example of humorous reappraisal. So even though that event stressed me out,
Yeah.
and I was sitting there beating myself up over it and like, oh man, I probably lost that opportunity. Going back and playing what I call the what I could have said game. Like, why did I get
Mhm.
so flustered? Why did I get so stressed? Why did I play that out like a drama? Going back and going, well, what could I have done or said to add a little humor or respond with some levity?
Yeah.
That going back and replaying it and finding a way to add humor, like what you said, well, good thing I had 2 keys, or, you know, bring some earplugs, I snore, whatever. The
Yeah.
that is really helpful in reclaiming past stressors and reclaiming a little power over them, and making it more likely that you don't get as flustered or worked up during the next stressful moment.
Yeah. I love that also, just to build on it, that inner voice is always killer, right? The inner voice of like, oh, what I do. But like when I finally had a few sessions of therapy, curiosity was a big term. Just like, just approach it with curiosity. And then just like, oh, okay. I'm just curious. Why the frick did I do that? You know, like, and it just changes my tone to myself and my
I
inner,
love
my
that.
inner voice.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, rather than like, oh, you idiot, you ruined that. It's
Yeah.
like, I wonder why I let that get to me, or why I couldn't play that off, you know, or why that was such a big deal to me.
Yeah. I almost was going to
Yeah.
stroke my mustache for a second there, but I realized like,
I wonder,
I
do you ever
wonder.
do this? Was that like an evil movie villain? Like,
Then I'll really have. I hope. Hopefully, you'll let me know when I have one that long. That I'll be like,
right. Yeah, I'll be a good
what do you
friend.
think, Paul? Thank you.
Yeah. I'll be a good friend with that. I'm curious if anyone has any questions. I'm kind of looking at the chat. Uh, that's a movie of highs and lows. Oh yeah, for sure.
Uh-huh.
But feel free if you have any questions, put it in the chat. Jen and I would be happy to answer any questions. What else you got, Jen?
One thing that I was thinking about too, if taking ourselves so seriously, it also made me think of how I've been getting into meditation more and more. And when I first started, I was so serious. You know, this is like, like I was really deep into it, and I was getting into like things that were important. And it wasn't until probably beginning of this year, maybe at the end of last, I was like, wait a second. The point of me getting deep and going inward is for me to get light. So why am I so serious about my meditation? And then I started understanding, because I've been watching a lot of guides on how to do it, and it really has been helpful to actually realize the point of meditation is to, in my practice at least right now, is the deeper I go, the lighter I go. And that is so connected to what you're saying in your story, is like not taking it so seriously, in the sense of it's more about curiosity. And that is what kind of like opened up my practice into. I would see some, Zen masters, and they would be smiling during the meditation. I'm like, how are they smiling? This is like, and then I'm like, oh, that's why. I mean, it's so natural. I thought it was so like I felt forced, but didn't like realize that if you get lighter about the things that we can get deep about, it actually becomes a more elevating experience.
That I love that you said that, because when we think of meditation and even mindfulness practices and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, I think we tend to think of it as very serious, you know, like, okay, you don't bother me, I'm meditating, and I gotta, you know, and I just got to be so deep and serious about it. But I love the fact that he was doing that with a smile on his face, and I like that the deeper you go, the lighter you go. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been
And
helpful. Steven's going up with some killer jokes here.
oh wait, what do you do with an elephant with 3 balls? Walk him and pitch to the rhino. I like it. I like it. Very good, Stephen. Very good. Yeah, you know, I think your example, Jen, really comes back to how much control we have over our own well-being and our own happiness. And when I was talking about our brain always wanting to make us the centerpiece, the actor in this drama, there was a point in my life where I realized, like, I have control over that. And I don't want to live my life as an actor in a drama just to reach the end to find out I was the director and it could have been a comedy. And I think life can't be a comedy always. I mean, it's not about always laughing at our situation. Sometimes it's about laughing through it. But we can moment to moment choose whether or not that moment could potentially have been a comedy rather than a drama.
Yeah. I'm a fan of dramedies, knowing it does go like Steel Magnolias.
Well, thank you so much. And everybody who participated, if you have more questions, or if you missed this and you're seeing a replay of this in the future, hello from the past. What's the future like? And feel free to reach out to us with any questions, and we will do our best to get back to you. And maybe we'll be doing some more of these at some point. So, Jenn, thank you so much for stopping by and doing this with me.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Beep, beep.